The moment Jackson Wilson opened his wife's hidden journal, his world shattered. A single name, Trevor, scrawled in Emily's handwriting, unraveling 20 years of trust in one gut-punching instant. Jackson, a 45-year-old engineer from Seattle, had been planning the perfect family getaway to a lakeside cabin in Oregon's Cascade Mountains. It was meant to be a celebration of their 20th anniversary, a chance to reconnect with Emily and their two teenagers, Leah, 16, and Nate, 14. He'd even taken an extra day off work, imagining cozy evenings by the fire, laughter echoing through the pines. But now, standing in their cluttered garage, a dusty journal in his hands, that dream felt like a lie. Jackson was the kind of man who believed in doing things right. He'd built a steady life in Seattle's suburbs, complete with a craftsman-style house, a backyard grill, and a reputation as the dad who never missed a school concert. His job at a tech firm wasn't glamorous, but it paid for soccer cleats, college funds, and the occasional family vacation. Emily, a marketing consultant, was his partner in it all, sharp, charming, the one who planned barbecues and kept their social calendar buzzing. They were the couple everyone envied, the ones who made it through late-night diaper changes, job stress, and the chaos of raising teens. Or so Jackson thought. The Oregon trip was his idea, a reset after a hectic year. He'd found a cabin online, a cedar retreat with a wraparound deck and a view of a glassy lake. He could already picture Leah rolling her eyes at his corny campfire stories, Nate begging to skip hiking for video games. Emily had been all in, texting him playlists for the drive and teasing him about his terrible packing skills. It felt like a chance to hit pause, to remember why they'd fallen in love. But the day before they were set to leave, everything changed. Jackson had gone to the garage to find their old travel bags, the ones they always used for road trips. The space was a mess. Boxes of Christmas lights, kids' outgrown bikes, and random tools he swore he'd organize someday. He was rummaging through a pile when he spotted a plain cardboard box tucked behind a stack of holiday decorations. It didn't look like much, but something about it felt off, like it had been deliberately shoved out of sight. Curiosity tugged at him. He pulled it out, brushing off a layer of dust, and lifted the flimsy lid. Inside were a few old items, a faded concert t-shirt, a couple of dried-out pens, and a stack of journals. The journals were worn, some spiral-bound, others with soft leather covers. At first, he smiled, thinking they might be Emily's college notes. She'd once mentioned dabbling in writing back when she dreamed of being a novelist. Maybe he'd find a sweet memory to share on their trip, something to make her laugh. He opened the smallest one, its cover faded, and saw her maiden name in neat black ink, Emily Clark. His heart warmed for a moment, picturing a younger Emily scribbling her thoughts. But warmth turned to ice as he read the first few pages. The entries started innocently. College classes, late-night talks with roommates, dreams of traveling to Paris. Then the tone shifted. Emily wrote about a man named Mike, her words vivid, almost giddy. The details weren't explicit, but they were enough to make Jackson's stomach churn. He flipped ahead, hoping it was a one-off, a fling before they met. But then came Eric, then Jared, and then, like a knife to the chest, Trevor, their neighbor, the guy Jackson had gone fishing with whose kids played with Leah and Nate. The entry was dated 2003, a year after their wedding. Jackson's hands trembled as he closed the journal. His pulse thumped in his ears, the garage suddenly too small, too cold. He wanted to believe he'd misread it, that it was a mistake. But Emily's handwriting was unmistakable, her words clear. She described those moments with a kind of pride, calling them stolen sparks that made her feel alive. Jackson leaned against the wall, the box at his feet, trying to steady his breathing. He thought of the nights he'd worked late to save for their first home, the way Emily had smiled when he proposed. Had it all been a lie? He didn't confront her right away. Emily was upstairs, humming as she packed snacks for the drive. Her voice, so normal, so cheerful, felt like a betrayal of its own. Jackson sat on an old stool, staring at the journals, his mind racing. He could pretend he hadn't seen them, zip up the suitcases, and drive to Oregon like nothing was wrong. But the truth was a splinter under his skin, impossible to ignore. He needed to know more, not just what she'd done, but why she'd hidden it, why she'd let him build a life on a foundation of secrets. By the time Emily called out, asking if he'd found the bags, Jackson had made a decision. The trip was off. He didn't know what came next, but he knew he couldn't unsee those words, couldn't unfeel the crack forming in his heart. He carried the box inside, careful not to let it slip, as if it were evidence in a case he hadn't yet understood. All he knew was that the man he'd been, an engineer, a husband, a father, was about to change, and there was no going back. Jackson sat at the kitchen table, the journal open in front of him, its pages a map of a life he didn't recognize. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak. Emily was out picking up last-minute supplies for their now-canceled Oregon trip. Jackson hadn't told her it was off yet. He couldn't bring himself to speak, not until he understood the full scope of what he'd found. The journal entries gnawed at him, each one a fresh wound. Emily had written about men, too many to dismiss as youthful mistakes. Some names were strangers, others achingly familiar. Trevor, their neighbor, stood out, his name appearing in entries dated just after their wedding. The words weren't graphic, but they were vivid enough to burn. Moments of freedom, as she called them, stolen while Jackson worked late or traveled for work. He tried to focus, to piece together a timeline. One entry, dated 2002, described a night with Trevor at a local bar, their laughter spilling into a quiet parking lot afterward. Jackson remembered that month. He'd been pulling overtime to afford their honeymoon. He'd thought Emily's glow was from wedding planning, not secret meetups. His chest tightened as he flipped further, finding a small envelope tucked between pages. Inside were a few photos, old 4x6 prints from a drugstore developer. The first showed a younger Emily, laughing on a couch with two men he didn't know, her posture relaxed, too close. A handwritten note on the back read, "Best night." Another photo had her in a car, leaning toward a man Jackson vaguely recalled from a neighborhood cookout. His hands shook as he set them down. The worst came last, an entry from early 2004, 9 months before Leo was born. Emily wrote about a weekend with a man named Jared, her words carefree, almost defiant. Jackson's mind raced to Leah, his daughter, the girl he'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, cheered for at every soccer game. Could she? He pushed the thought away, but it clung like damp rot. He needed certainty, but the idea of a DNA test felt like a betrayal of its own. Yet the overlap of dates was too precise to ignore. When Emily returned, her arms full of grocery bags, she froze in the doorway. The journal lay open on the table, photos beside it. Her face drained of color, eyes darting from the evidence to Jackson's rigid silence. "Jackson," she started, her voice small. "This was a long time ago." He didn't look up. "A long time ago," he repeated, his tone low, sharp. "This was after we were married, Emily. After you wore my ring." She set the bags down, hands trembling. "I was young, figuring myself out. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" He stood, his chair scraping the floor. "You wrote it down, Emily. You kept these like trophies. And Trevor, our neighbor? The guy I invited to our house." Her lips parted, but no words came. Jackson's voice cracked. "What about Leah? That entry from '04. Tell me I'm wrong." Emily's eyes welled up, but she didn't answer. The silence was an answer itself. Jackson backed away, his throat tight. "You let me believe she was mine. You let me raise her, love her, and you knew." "I didn't know for sure," Emily whispered, tears spilling. "I hope she was yours. I love you, Jackson. I chose you." He shook his head, the room too small for her words. "You chose to lie. For 20 years. He grabbed the journal, the photos, and walked to the garage, needing air, needing space. Emily didn't follow. He sat on the same stool where he'd first read her words, the box at his feet. The life he'd built, husband, father, provider, felt like a house of cards, one truth away from collapse. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just sat, the weight of betrayal heavier than he'd ever imagined. Jackson didn't sleep that night. The guest room, with its stiff mattress and bare walls, felt like a stranger's house. Emily stayed in their bedroom, but the space between them was a chasm. He lay awake, replaying her words, her excuses. "I hope she was yours," she'd said about Leah. The uncertainty was a blade, twisting deeper with every thought. By morning, he'd made a choice. He needed answers, not just for himself, but for his daughter. He called Emily into the living room, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "You need to go stay with your sister in Portland. I can't do this with you here." Her eyes glistened, but she nodded, packing a bag in silence. When her car pulled out of the driveway, Jackson felt no relief, only a hollow ache. He didn't tell Leah or Nate right away. They were at school, oblivious to the fracture in their family. Instead, he contacted a lawyer, a calm woman named Susan who specialized in family law. She listened as he explained the journals, the photos, the doubt about Leah. "We can start with a DNA test," Susan said, her tone professional but kind. "It's discreet, and it'll give you clarity." Jackson hesitated, his heart heavy. Clarity sounded like a trap, a door he couldn't unopen. But he agreed, knowing Leah deserved the truth as much as he did. When he sat Leah down that evening, her soccer uniform still dusty from practice, he chose his words carefully. "Sweetheart, I found some things your mom wrote a long time ago. They've raised questions about when you were born." Leah's brow furrowed, her sharp mind catching on fast. "What kind of questions?" she asked, her voice small. Jackson swallowed hard. "I'm getting a test to confirm I'm your dad. Biologically. But no matter what, you're my daughter." Her eyes searched his, fear flickering. "You think I'm not?" He pulled her into a hug, his throat tight. "I think you're mine in every way that matters. This is just to be sure." The test was quick, a swab mailed to a lab. Waiting for results was torture. Jackson kept busy, taking Nate to basketball practice, helping Leah with her history project. But the journals haunted him. He read more, unable to stop, each entry a fresh betrayal. One described a night with a man named Eric while Jackson was away at a conference. Another mentioned sneaking out during his night shifts. The worst was a note tucked in a journal, a scribbled phone number from Trevor, dated years after their supposed friendship ended. Jackson's anger flared, not just at Emily, but at himself. How'd he miss this? How had he trusted so blindly? Then Emily called, her voice shaky. "Jackson, I know you're mad, but don't tell the kids. Please, let me explain to them." He gripped the phone, his jaw tight. "You had 20 years to explain. You don't get to control this now." She sobbed, begging, but he hung up. Her attempt to manage the fallout felt like another manipulation, a way to rewrite her story. He wouldn't let her. Not this time. When the DNA results arrived, Jackson opened the email alone, his heart pounding. The words blurred. 0% probability of paternity. Leah wasn't his, not biologically. The room spun, memories flashing. Her first steps, her gap-toothed grin, the way she'd curl up next to him during thunderstorms. He'd been her father in every moment, but Emily had known there was a chance he wasn't. And she'd said nothing. He sat on the couch, the printout in his hands, feeling like a stranger in his own life. Leah came home an hour later, her eyes locking on his face. "It's bad, isn't it?" she whispered. He nodded, unable to lie. She cried, but then she grabbed his hand. "You're still my dad. I don't care what the test says." Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't erase the betrayal. Emily hadn't just lied to him. She'd stolen a truth from them both. Jackson's world had cracked open, but he refused to let it collapse. The DNA test confirmed Leah wasn't his biologically, yet her fierce grip on his hand, her insistence that he was still her dad, gave him a reason to keep going. He wasn't just fighting for himself now. He was fighting for his kids, for the truth they all deserved. Emily was still in Portland, sending texts he left unanswered. Her apologies felt hollow, like Band-Aids on a broken bone. Jackson needed space, but more than that, he needed to rebuild on solid ground. He started with small steps. He met with his lawyer, Susan, to discuss his options. Divorce was on the table, but he wasn't ready to decide. Instead, he focused on protecting Leah and Nate. Susan suggested a private investigator to see if Emily had other secrets, a precaution to ensure no more surprises. Jackson agreed, though the idea left a bitter taste. He also started seeing a therapist, a quiet man named Dr. Patel, who helped him untangle the rage and grief nodding his chest. "You're not just mourning a marriage," Dr. Patel said. "You're mourning the story you thought was true." Those words stuck, guiding Jackson toward action over despair. The investigators' report came back within a week. Emily's past was as the journals described. No new bombshells, but there was something else. Trevor, their former neighbor, had been bragging at a local bar about his history with Emily, even recently, spinning tales that painted Jackson as a fool. The gossip had started to spread, whispers reaching their tight-knit Seattle suburb. Jackson's first instinct was to confront Trevor, to demand answers, but Dr. Patel's advice echoed. Choose control, not chaos. Instead, he took Susan's suggestion and filed a defamation lawsuit against Trevor, using his public statements as evidence. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming his dignity. Telling Nate was harder than telling Leah. At 14, Nate was quieter, more guarded. Jackson sat him down after dinner, explaining the journals and the DNA test without sugarcoating. Nate's face hardened, his fists clenched. "Why will Mom do that? To you? To us?" Jackson had no answer, only a hand on his son's shoulder. "I don't know, buddy, but we're going to be okay. You, me, Leah, we're enough." Nate nodded, but his silence spoke volumes. He stopped texting Emily, his hurt a wall she couldn't breach. Leah, meanwhile, struggled in her own way. She threw herself into school, but Jackson noticed her quieter moments, the way she'd stare at old family photos. One night, she found him in the kitchen and asked, "Did Mom ever love you? Like, really?" Jackson paused, the question cutting deep. "I think she did in her way, but she chose to hide the truth, and that's not love." Leah hugged him, her voice muffled. "I'm glad you're my dad." Those words fueled him, a reminder of what mattered. The lawsuit gained traction. Trevor's boasts were well documented. Bar patrons had overheard him, and one even recorded a rant on their phone. Susan built a strong case, arguing that Trevor's lies damaged Jackson's reputation and caused emotional distress. Jackson didn't want the money. He wanted accountability. He also started volunteering at a community center, leading a support group for parents navigating family challenges. Sharing his story, even vaguely, helped him feel less alone. He wasn't that guy anymore. He was a man taking back his narrative. Emily tried reaching out again, leaving a voicemail. "Jackson, I'm so sorry. I want to fix this for the kids." He deleted it. Her chance to fix things had passed. Leah and Nate needed stability, not her excuses. Jackson focused on them, on rebuilding trust. He wasn't healed, not yet, but he was moving forward, step by deliberate step, determined to show his kids that truth and strength could outlast betrayal. Jackson stood in the courtroom, his hands steady as he faced Trevor across the aisle. The defamation case had moved quickly, and today was the final hearing. Trevor's bravado was gone, replaced by a nervous fidgeting as Susan presented evidence. Witness statements, a grainy phone recording of his barroom boasts about Emily. Jackson didn't speak much, but when he took the stand, his voice was clear. "I've lived my life honestly. I didn't deserve to be mocked for someone else's lies." The judge agreed, ruling in Jackson's favor. Trevor was ordered to pay a modest fine and issue a public apology, published in the local paper. It wasn't about the money. It was about the truth being seen. Back home, Jackson felt the weight lift, if only slightly. Leah and Nate were waiting in the living room, their faces anxious. "Did we win?" Nate asked. Jackson nodded, pulling them into a hug. "We did. Not just the case, but what matters, you two." Leah smiled, a real one, the kind he hadn't seen in weeks. The victory wasn't just legal. It was a signal to his kids that they could stand up to pain and come out stronger. Emily stayed in Portland, her attempts to reconnect fading. Leah stopped replying to her texts, and Nate had blocked her number. Word from Emily's sister was that she was struggling, grappling with the consequences of her choices. Jackson didn't gloat. He didn't have the energy for it. Instead, he focused on moving forward. He sold the Seattle house, its walls too full of memories, and moved with Leah and Nate to Bend, a quiet town nestled in Oregon's high desert. The new place was smaller, a ranch-style home with a view of snow-capped peaks, but it felt like a fresh start. In Bend, Jackson threw himself into creating a new rhythm. He enrolled Leah in a photography class, something she'd always loved, and coached Nate's basketball team, laughing at his son's terrible free throws. They hiked together on weekends, the crunch of pine needles underfoot a kind of therapy. One evening, as they sat by a lake, Leah handed Jackson a photo she'd taken, a silhouette of the three of them against the sunset. "This is us now," she said. He framed it, hanging it above the fireplace. He also met Kate, a single mom who ran a local coffee shop. She'd been through her own betrayal, her ex-husband leaving her for a co-worker. They met at a community event, bonding over shared stories of resilience. There was no rush, no pressure, just easy conversations over coffee, walks along the Deschutes River, and a quiet understanding. Kate didn't try to fix Jackson, and he didn't need to impress her. Their connection was a soft landing, a reminder that trust could be rebuilt. Jackson kept volunteering, expanding his support group to help others navigate family crises. Sharing his journey, stripped of shame, gave him purpose. He wasn't defined by Emily's betrayal anymore. He was defined by his choices, his love for Leah and Nate, his commitment to truth. One night, Leah called from her room. "Dad, if I could pick, I'd choose you every time." Her words hit harder than any court ruling, sealing a bond biology couldn't touch. Emily sent one last message, a brief note. "I hope you're happy." Jackson didn't reply. Happiness wasn't the point. Peace was. He'd found it in Bend, in the laughter of his kids, in the quiet moments by the river. The scar of betrayal remained, but it no longer bled. Justice, he realized, wasn't just Trevor's apology or Emily's isolation. It was this, a life rebuilt, not on lies, but on the love and strength he'd chosen to carry forward.